Hello, Mr. Wood here. Welcome to our 13th lesson in our series on Judaism, beliefs and teachings. This lesson is all about the sanctity of life. We have two objectives today. We're going to understand the Jewish teaching on the sanctity of life, and also we're going to look at this concept, this principle, Pikuach Nefesh, and understand that fully. What do we need to know? We need to know that Jews believe that human life is uniquely special and should be protected at all costs. And Pikuach Nefesh is the principle that places saving a life above every other religious obligation. What's the greatest gift you've ever been given? Or what's the last great gift you remember receiving? I got an awesome gift for my 21st birthday from my parents. It was this guitar, that's right. This bad boy right here. Little G chord there for you. Now, think about a great gift. There's a few things you should do with a great gift. Now, the first thing you should do with a great gift is treat it really well to show that it's special to you. So this guitar, I try to keep it well tuned. I hang it up on the wall so it looks good, and I keep it clean. The other thing I do is I try and play it often. And I think if I didn't play it often or treat it well, that'd be quite disrespectful to my parents who got it for me as a gift. In a similar way, Jews believe that life is a wonderful gift that God has given them. That life is God's greatest gift to us all. In an earlier video, we looked at creation and we looked at day 6 in creation, where human beings are made. And in the book of Genesis, it says that God breathed life into Adam's nostrils and he came to be. And that human life is different to every other animal life. Humans were made last, and humans were made in the image of God. And there's this really special moment where God literally breathes that life into human beings. And so because of that, in Judaism, human life is held above the life of every other animal. It's different, it's special, it's precious. This is the idea of the sanctity of life, that life is precious and God-given, and so therefore sacred. We talked about the guitar and using the guitar, using the gift that God has given us. And for Jews, this special gift that God has given, we should use our lives to glorify God, to worship God, and also to take part in Tikkun Olam and work towards repairing the world and healing the world. So just to summarize, God's gift to us is life, and we should use that life really well and wisely because it's his precious gift to us. When we look in the Torah, there's lots of different verses we could go to, but a really simple one, nice, easy one to remember on this topic is do not kill. In the 10 Commandments, it says do not kill, which applies to a human killing another human. And because of this, human life should be seen as really, really precious. And we'll see when we look at some themes later down the line that this brings up some big ethical questions for Jews, especially when we look at topics like euthanasia and abortion. And where does the sanctity of life come into these discussions? Is it murder? Is it going against one of the 10 Commandments to have an abortion? And we'll look at what Jews think about that when we look at that in the theme section. One really interesting part of scripture that comes from the Torah and is then pulled out and expanded on it in the Talmud is this. And we went back and we looked at a bit of this when we did the mitzvot. We know there's 613 rules for Jews to follow. Now, in the book of Leviticus, God says, keep my laws, which if a man do, he shall live by them. Because those words that he shall live by these laws. Now, in the Talmud, this has been expanded on and taken further, where the rabbis have written, he shall live by them, and not that he shall die by them. And this brings us into what I think is a really interesting part of Jewish teaching, which is that the mitzvot, the commandments, are there to bring life. Now, if the mitzvot are going to get in the way of life, if they're going to prevent life from continuing, then you need to abandon those mitzvot. This brings us to a really important topic, which is Pikuach Nefesh, which literally means saving a life. And it's basically the principle that puts saving a life above every other religious obligation. So the mitzvot are incredibly important, as we've seen, and following them to the letter of the law is really, really crucial for Jews. But if the same mitzvot get in the way of a life being saved, then they should be abandoned. And actually the most important thing should be saving life. Now I find this fascinating again, but you remember these laws are going back thousands of years. So Jews need to think with medical technology as it exists today, how far should we go with saving a life? Should we save a life at all costs? There's lots of interesting areas of debate for Jews in this realm. One hot topic under this area is organ donation. Now, it says there's lots of Jewish teaching that says that a human body should be buried whole and complete. But actually, if an organ can be donated, which saves someone's life and thereby complies with Pikuach Nefesh, then surely that should be done. Even though it's not ideal, it's saving someone's life and therefore should be seen as a good thing. Some Jews have discussed the topic of post-mortems, autopsies, and whether or not a body should be cut up after someone's died or not. And some Jews will say yes, it should, if that's going to enable lives to be saved. Pikuach Nefesh. So what does Pikuach Nefesh look like in practice? Well, let's look at a few examples. Number one, let's say you were an ambulance driver or you worked on a lifeboat and someone needs rescuing and it was Shabbat, it was the day of rest. It would be acceptable for you to break the Shabbat rest rules to go to work in order to save someone's life. The same if you were a doctor or a surgeon. If it was Yom Kippur and it was a 5-hour fast where you shouldn't be eating or drinking, but you were in danger of dying because you were ill, it would be okay to break the fast in order to save the life. You can see where this is going. A couple of organizations that might be helpful to look at. If you go to www.hazola.org, you'll see that this is a group of volunteers working together in North London. And what they do is they aid medical services in the area. So there's a lot of people who are trained in first aid who might be able to get there and rescue someone and save lives effectively. And it might be Shabbat. And again, they might be going against those rules, but it would be in order to save someone's life. Finally, this is a really interesting group, Green Faith, and they're all about saving the environment. And one of the driving forces behind the movement is Pikuach Nefesh, and it's the idea that we're saving lives by helping the environment, because if the environment's healthy and there's less natural disasters, etc., then lives are going to be saved. Okay, team, 5 questions, couple of extensions. Pause the video here, and when you're ready, we'll look at the answers. Alrighty, let's check your understanding. So what is meant by the sanctity of life? This is the idea that human life is precious and it's God-given, and it should be protected at all costs. Number 2, why do Jews believe that human life is sacred? Well, humans were made in the image of God, and God breathed life into humans. Number 3, which of the 10 commandments can be linked to the idea that life is sacred? You could argue that do not kill can be linked to this idea. Number 4, what is meant by Pikuach Nefesh? Pikuach Nefesh literally means saving a life, and it's the idea that you're obliged to save a life over every other religious obligation. An example of applying it might be on Shabbat, going to work if you were a surgeon to save someone's life, or breaking the fast on Yom Kippur if it meant your life was going to be saved. Now, hopefully you found the extension interesting if you had a go at it, but basically for Jews, they've got lots of different guiding lights in their life. They've got the 613 Mitzvot, which we've looked at. They've got the 3 moral principles. Again, we've looked at that a couple of lessons ago. And now a new idea as well is Pikuach Nefesh. And you could make an argument for each of these really as to why that one particular area should be the primary guidance. And it's up to you really, your opinion as to which one you think should be number 1. Okay, that brings us to the end of the lesson. So let's just visit that need to know one last time. You need to know that Jews believe that human life is uniquely special and valuable, and it should be protected at all costs. Pikuach Nefesh is the principle that the preservation of human life takes precedent over everything else. See you next time.